Chapter 115. The cold mountain wind howled endlessly around the small wooden hut at the peak of Nightpool Mountain. Snow drifted across the red stone surface, while the flames inside the fire pit crackled softly, casting dancing shadows across the aged face of Academy Master Da Vinci. Tony Clark stared at the old man while slowly rotating the jade teacup between his fingers. The herbal fragrance inside the room was calming, but the atmosphere between them was anything but peaceful. "What is your exchange offer, Elder?" Tony asked with a serious look. "Tell me, what can you give against 500 years of lifespan?" Da Vinci did not answer immediately. The old man lifted the teacup toward his lips and took a long sip before placing it back near the fire pit. "My supreme inheritance," he replied in a heavy tone. Tony's brows twitched. For any ordinary martial artist, such an offer would be enough to make them kneel on the spot. A supreme warrior's inheritance represented a lifetime of cultivation, enlightenment, battle experience, and secrets that countless people would kill for. Tony remained calm. After thinking for a moment, he shook his head. "I am not convinced." Da Vinci looked at him before laughing. "Ha ha ha, I expected that answer." The old man leaned back against the wooden chair and sighed. "If it was any other disciple, they would have agreed before I finished speaking. But you are different, Tony Clark. You are already standing behind the shadow of two supreme warriors inside your family. Naturally, my inheritance alone cannot tempt you." Tony did not smile. "You already know all this, Elder Da Vinci. Stop testing me and come to the real point." The old man's fingers paused. For the first time since their meeting began, his expression became truly serious. "There is something valuable, which is definitely worth 500 years of lifespan, but I cannot reveal it to you right now." Tony frowned. "Sorry, Elder. I do not make deals based on blind promises. Tell me what it is. Only then can I decide whether risking my life for your lifespan treasure is worth it or not." Da Vinci fell silent. The room became quiet except for the crackling fire. Even the mountain wind outside seemed distant. Finally, the old man exhaled. "It is about another world." Tony's eyes narrowed. "A cultivation world. A world filled with people stronger than supreme warriors by hundreds of times. A world where Earth would look like a forgotten corner." Tony's fingers tightened around the teacup. Da Vinci continued in a calm but heavy tone. "Even the Octopus organization does not know about this place. The method to reach that world, the coordinates, the conditions, everything remains hidden. Only me and two other independent supremes know this secret." Tony remained silent, but inside his mind, waves were crashing violently. Another cultivation world, a place where supreme warriors were considered weak. If such a world truly existed, everything would change. Da Vinci looked into Tony's eyes. "If you bring me the lifespan treasure during the World Tree Blessing, I will tell you everything I know. I will also provide the resources and support necessary to help you reach that world." Tony placed the teacup down. The firelight reflected across his face. "Elder, stop joking." Da Vinci raised an eyebrow. "If such a world truly exists, why did you not go there yourself? Why are you desperately chasing a 500-year lifespan treasure instead of entering that world and living for thousands of years happily?" Da Vinci smiled bitterly. "There are conditions." "What conditions?" "Conditions that my old body can no longer fulfill." The old man extended his wrinkled hand toward the fire. "My bones are already tied to this earth. Even if the gate opens before me, I no longer possess the qualifications to enter. But you are different." His eyes sharpened. "You are young. Your blood is strong. Your destiny has not settled yet." Tony remained unconvinced. "Elder, your answers are too vague. You should at least tell me those conditions. Otherwise, how can this information be useful for me?" Da Vinci shook his head. "No." His tone was firm. "A deal is a deal. Bring me the treasure first. Only then will I reveal everything." Tony stared at him. The two men measured each other again. One was an old supreme warrior nearing the end of his lifespan. The other was a rising monster whose potential could no longer be hidden. Da Vinci spoke again. "And I promise one more thing. If you agree, my supreme inheritance will belong only to you. I will never pass it to another person on Earth." Tony leaned back while thinking. The information Da Vinci offered was enough to shake the entire world if revealed publicly. A hidden cultivation world. A secret unknown even to the Octopus organization. The value was immeasurable. Still, Tony did not immediately agree. "Okay, Elder," he finally said. "But I also have conditions." Da Vinci smiled. "Greedy brat. Speak." "I need resources that improve comprehension." Da Vinci nodded. "The night pool. It can definitely help, but it only works for a few hours. After that it takes years to regain the ability." Tony's eyes flashed. "You already told me about it. I want access to it in a few days." "Agreed," Da Vinci said with a decisive look. Tony continued. "And I want unrestricted access to your Academy treasury. I will take whatever I want. You are not allowed to interfere." Da Vinci nearly choked on his tea. "You are really shameless." Tony shrugged. "You are buying 500 years of life. Stop acting stingy." The old man laughed before nodding. "Fine. Agreed. And one more thing." Da Vinci narrowed his eyes. "What now?" "In the future, you cannot stand against the Clark family." Chapter 116. In the future, you cannot stand against the Clark family. Tony Clark stared at Da Vinci with a serious look. This time, the old man became silent for much longer. As Academy Master of 9 Lotus Academy, remaining neutral was extremely important. Supporting any major family openly could destroy the Academy position and his reputation. Still, after looking at Tony carefully, and after thinking about his monstrous growth, Da Vinci finally answered. You are really pushing me to the limits, brat. But I can only promise this after you bring me the treasure. Fair enough. Tony smiled slightly. And after you use the lifespan treasure, you must show me the method personally. I also want to understand how it works. Da Vinci stared at him for a moment, before suddenly laughing loudly. Ha ha ha. You little fox. You truly plan to squeeze every drop of profit from this old man. And you are desperate enough to accept it. Tony smiled back calmly. For the next several hours, the two continued discussing world politics, hidden family conflicts, supreme warriors, and major powers operating in the shadows. The more Tony spoke, the more shocked Da Vinci became. The boy before him was frighteningly mature, and had clear plans to lead the Clark family to peak dominance. Tony's understanding of politics, manipulation, family feuds, and martial power structures was far beyond his age. At one point, Da Vinci even forgot he was speaking with a junior. Slowly, he became convinced of his decision to take Tony's support over Mark Smith. The sky outside slowly brightened. Morning sunlight finally spread across the snowy mountain peaks. Da Vinci stood up slowly with a heavy sigh. Since we reached an agreement, let me fulfill my part first. I will take you to the Academy Treasury. Tony's eyes immediately brightened. The Academy Treasury. The two left the wooden hut and descended toward the hidden underground vault beneath the Sword Peak. Da Vinci created a fog-like screen. While using his floating ability, Tony could not tell where they were actually going. After some time, they both stood before a long dome-shaped vault. It appeared like a train cave. They continued to float forward. Along the way, Da Vinci activated countless ancient formations hidden beneath the stone path's massive barriers, opened silently, while ancient mechanisms rotated deep underground. Finally, they arrived before a gigantic metallic gate covered in ancient runes. Da Vinci pressed his palm against the surface. Several fingerprint formations activated simultaneously. After finally opening the modern safety alarms and metal doors, they passed through small rooms of regular rank treasures. Tony did not even take a proper look at them. After walking to the end, the real old treasury appeared in sight. As Da Vinci placed 7 different shaped locks in the heads of 7 serpents, the ancient locks rotated. Energy rippled through the circular lock, which began making creaking noises. The gate slowly opened. The moment Tony stepped inside, even he could not hide his surprise. This place is more secure than my Clark family vault, Tony muttered in an appreciating tone. The treasury stretched endlessly like an underground train passage. Long metallic halls spread into different sections, each separated according to resource category. Weapons, ancient manuals, elemental treasures, formation artifacts, beast materials, alchemy resources, movement treasures. Everything was perfectly organized behind crystal barriers. Tony's eyes immediately began shining. Da Vinci suddenly felt uneasy. Very uneasy. Without hesitation, Tony directly began collecting items. This one. He casually swept dozens of high-grade life energy pills into his storage ring. Da Vinci's eyelids twitched violently. Boy, at least leave some for future disciples. Your Clark family also has many of these things. Tony ignored him completely. Soon, he arrived before a section filled with movement treasures. A pair of black boots floated in the air, while wind energy continuously circulated around them. Tony immediately read the description. Flying cloud boots, increases aerial movement speed by 30% for grandmasters. I am taking this. Before Da Vinci could react, the boots disappeared into Tony's ring. The old man took a deep breath. Then Tony moved toward another section. Several crimson crystals burned softly like living flames. Tony's eyes lit up. Fire affinity crystals. Da Vinci nodded reluctantly. Those help improve elemental compatibility over long periods. Good. Tony immediately took all 6. Da Vinci's heart almost stopped. You greedy little bandit. Tony pretended not to hear him. Further ahead, he discovered a strange silver spear floating in isolation, while lightning crackled around it. Beside it rested a sky-rank chain weapon covered in ancient black runes. Tony even found several ancient mechanical treasures resembling lost Gongji engineering techniques. One metallic arm caught his attention immediately. The fingers moved slightly on their own. What is this? Da Vinci reluctantly answered. An ancient puppet weapon recovered from ruins. Once activated, it can release Grandmaster-level attacks automatically. Tony's eyes widened slightly. Interesting. He immediately stored it away. Da Vinci nearly coughed blood. This is robbery. Complete robbery. Tony finally stopped before a section containing cultivation manuals. Ancient jade scrolls floated quietly behind crystal barriers. One of them immediately caught his attention. Burning Heaven Mirage Shadows. Tony opened it slightly and smiled. Camouflage-type martial art. Pseudo-sky rank. He took it. Another manual soon followed. 9 pulse explosion art. Then another. Void tracing eyes. Da Vinci watched silently while his face darkened further and further. At this point, Tony no longer resembled a disciple. He looked exactly like a victorious warlord emptying an enemy treasury after conquest. Hours passed. Tony continued wandering happily, while Da Vinci followed behind him like an old man watching his life savings disappear one item at a time. Why are you taking so many manuals? You cannot use these many. You will lose focus. Da Vinci said in a warning tone. All these are not for me, elder. I have a beautiful wife and loyal servants. Tony replied with a glowing smile as he tossed another manual. Finally, Tony stopped abruptly at one end. At the very end of the treasury, inside a separate black compartment rested a single dark cube surrounded by ancient chains. The moment Tony looked at it, his instincts trembled. What is this? he asked slowly. Da Vinci's expression changed slightly. For the first time since entering the treasury, the old man looked serious again. That is something even I cannot fully understand. Chapter 117. Academy Master Da Vinci clasped his hands behind his back and stared at Tony in silence. Finally, he lost patience as Tony continued to pick all random treasures. Are you satisfied? Da Vinci asked in a grim tone. Tony was quiet for a moment. I need some herbs to save the White family girl. Tony reached into his storage ring and wrote a long list of herbs on a piece of paper. He held it out. These specific ones. Da Vinci took it. He unfolded it. He read through the list once, then read it again more slowly. His eyebrows moved upward incrementally with each name. He paused after reading just a few herb names. Tony, half of these herbs have not been seen in commercial circulation for decades. A few of them. He looked up. Are you certain? Yes. To save her, I need them right away, Tony replied with a decisive look. This will take time to source. My influence reaches far, but even I cannot produce extinct-grade herbs from nothing overnight, Da Vinci said with a helpless look. I know. Tony nodded slightly. I already moved my family. In case, if they cannot get any, I will leave that to you. Da Vinci looked at him for a long moment. Okay, I will handle it. Until then, use the treasury's aura-gathering yantra. The spiritual density in that room should accelerate the life energy significantly. Da Vinci folded the paper carefully and placed it inside his robe. Also the girl, how much time does she have? Enough. If you move quickly, Tony said with a long stare. Da Vinci nodded once and left. Tony sat in a lotus position and closed his eyes. The Clark family war room had not been used for a long time. Wars, in the traditional sense, were explosions. The movement of armies was visible enough to send messages before a single blow was struck. Power was displayed openly, because display was half the purpose. What the Clark family was organizing was the opposite of all that. Kent Clark, the Clark family ancestor, supreme warrior, living legend, a man whose name alone made nations tremble in fear, currently sat at the head of the long table. He was enjoying a meal after 33 days of closed cultivation. Ryan Clark sat 2 seats down, hands folded on the table. The Lee family. My son Tony wants them finished. They have a powerful overlord. Do you want me to go? The old ancestor Kent asked with one look. Yes, ancestor, Ryan said with a humble bow. Kent lifted his head from the food plate. Then I will make my move on time. He looked at the 2 commanders standing at the table's opposite end. No banners, no announcements, no visible mobilization. We move forces through the northern passage in civilian configuration, small units, staggered timing. His eyes were steady. By the time the Octopus organization realizes what is happening, the task will already be finished. The commanders nodded without speaking. Questions? Kent asked. Nobody had any. Because when the Clark family ancestor said move, the only correct response was to move. Meanwhile, on the other side of the family compound, Malkin, the Clark family's chief operations manager, was having the most expensive afternoon of her professional career. The herb list Tony had sent through was open on the table, in front of her, annotated now with prices, source contacts, acquisition timelines, and the increasingly alarming total cost. Her pen stopped moving at one point. She stared at the number. She sent the acquisition order anyway, because Patriarch Ryan had been extremely clear that morning. Tony's orders execute without ceiling. Whatever he needs. However much it costs. Malkin had served the Clark family for 13 years. She had processed large transactions before, land acquisitions, political arrangements, resource investments that could fund small nations for a year. But billions had changed hands in a single afternoon, and the list was not finished yet. She rubbed her temple. In the past, Patriarch Ryan would have reviewed every purchase related to Tony. He would have asked questions. He would have stopped the money flow. But Tony changed his stature with the arena fights. After that, Ryan Clark had returned from the projection screen with a different expression. Quieter, more certain. His son needed full, unconditional, unlimited support. Malkin sent the next acquisition order without hesitation. The billions kept moving. The healing tower corridor was very quiet in the afternoon. Most of the traffic through this section happened in the mornings. Patient intake, treatment scheduling, the general movement of healers and apprentices going about structured daily routines. By midday, the hallway outside the private treatment room settled into stillness. Lassie had been standing in it since morning. She shifted her weight slightly, then shifted it back. Her hands, folded in front of her, were not entirely steady, and she was very aware of that, so she pressed them together more firmly and made them stop. The small bottle was tucked inside her inner robe. Lassie had chosen the healing tower because Tony would come back here. He had unfinished work with the White family girl. He had to return. She checked the corridor again. Empty. She had been checking it every few minutes since morning. The same result each time. Apprentices passing occasionally, a doctor or two, nobody she was looking for. By late evening, a small doubt formed. By midday, the doubt had become something bigger. What if he already left? The thought arrived and refused to leave. Tony had declared his departure from the academy publicly, in front of thousands of people. He was not the type to make announcements and then delay. He was the type to say a thing and then do it, immediately, without looking back. What if he walked out this morning and he is already gone? Her hands tightened around each other. But then, her instinct pushed back. Quiet but firm. No. The White family girl. The treatment he had not finished. Tony Clark did not leave unfinished things. She had studied him long enough to be sure of that much. He would come here. Lassie exhaled slowly. She straightened her posture. She smoothed the front of her robe with one careful hand. The bottle pressed warm against her ribs. She settled back into stillness and waited. The corridor remained quiet. Afternoon light moved slowly across the floor through the high windows, shifting the shadows by degrees. Lassie did not move. Her body was still. Her eyes were fixed on the far end of the corridor, where the main entrance opened wide. But there was no sign of Tony Clark. And her hands, despite everything, were shaking again. Chapter 118. The Nine Lotus Academy treasury was silent except for the sound of breathing. Tony slowly opened his eyes. The life energy in the treasury room had thinned noticeably because of the heaven-devouring origin scripture. Hours of continuous cultivation had drawn it down like water from a well. Peak Grand Master. Tony smiled in satisfaction. Now the World Tree blessing was no longer a distant possibility. He was genuinely eligible. He just needed to wait until the World Tree blessing appeared. He exhaled slowly and reached for his communication orb. He tapped at one corner and sent a communication request. It connected after 2 rings. Malkin. Young master. Her voice was crisp despite the late hour. Malkin had never once in 19 years allowed exhaustion to show in her professional tone. I was expecting your call. What about the herbs? Report. Every item on your list has been sourced and delivered to the Healing Tower patient room as you mentioned, master. Quality verified on each, quantity confirmed. But, except one. The morning dew root. Every contact I reached came back empty. It is simply not in circulation right now, young master. I am sorry. Tony was quiet for a moment. Do not apologize. You covered everything else in a single day. He leaned back slightly. The attack on the Lee family. What is the status? Already in motion, Malkin said with a satisfied look. Your great-grandfather, Supreme Kent, agreed personally. Forces moved out before sunset in civilian configuration. Dark route, staggered. No announcement, no banners. The Lee family will not see it coming. Tony smiled. Good. He stood, stretching once. Get some rest, Malkin. You have earned it. As you command, young master. Good night. He ended the call. Just then Da Vinci opened the door with a big laugh. I told you I would move quickly, Da Vinci said, and pressed the storage ring into Tony's hand. Tony channeled a thread of energy into it. The contents floated between them. Stack after stack of carefully preserved herbs, each bundled and labeled in Da Vinci's personal storage method, cool-contained, spiritually sealed. Tony's eyes moved through them quickly. Near the bottom of the arrangement, bundled separately from the rest, wrapped in preservation silk, was the morning dew root. One complete set. Tony looked at it for a moment without speaking. Where did you get it, old man? Even my family failed to collect this morning dew root, Tony said in surprise. Ha ha ha. That one took 3 calls and a favor I have been holding for 11 years, Da Vinci said mildly. I hope it is worth it. It is worth it. It will save her life. Tony picked it up carefully. He gathered everything into his own storage, gave Da Vinci a single nod of genuine thanks, and moved toward the door. Tony. He paused. Da Vinci looked at him with the expression of someone who has more to say, and has decided against most of it. Remember your promise. Tony held his gaze for a moment. Then he left without answering. Outside, darkness filled everything. The academy had gone to sleep. No moon night, no light from above. Only the low amber glow of the stone lanterns spaced along the main routes. Everything beyond their reach was pure shadow. Tony moved through it on the snow leopard. The healing tower rose ahead, its upper windows faintly lit by the overnight duty staff. Tony guided the leopard along the side approach, dismounted at the eastern entrance, and moved through the door. As he pressed the 13th floor button, the door of the elevator closed behind him. But just at the last second, a shadow slipped inside the elevator. It was Lassie. She covered her face under a black silk mask. 3 seconds passed, and she directly used the seductive potion. A small detonation, barely audible, like a glass vial meeting a hard surface, and losing. The fog-like vapor expanded instantly, filling the enclosed space in less than a breath, colorless and fast and carrying something in it that was not just mist. Tony held his breath by reflex. Across from him in the fog, he heard the counting of a lady voice, barely audible, almost whispered. 1, 2, 3. He let the fog clear around him without moving, held his body still, let his internal energy cycle quietly through his system. 8, 9, 10. The fog was gone. Tony stood exactly where he had been standing. The figure across from him stopped counting. He crossed the distance in one step, reached out, and pulled the mask off her face in one clean motion. He looked at her. She looked at him. Edward's dog, Tony said. Lassie's jaw went wide open in complete shock. Because Tony was still standing with full consciousness. Those seductive potions do not work on me. He tilted his head slightly. I am a doctor, Lassie dog. He leaned forward slightly, just enough to be uncomfortable. So tell me something. His smirk appeared. Why did you use a seductive potion? Do you want to do that thing with me? Lassie was in utter shock. Not only had her expensive seductive potion failed, but Tony recognized her with one look. How did Tony Clark know about me? I am just a servant. Lassie did not understand what to do now. There was only one way. She clenched her fists and attacked. The poison dagger came from her left sleeve, fast, properly trained, aimed with genuine intent. Not a bluff. Not a warning strike. Tony caught her wrist. One hand. Clean. She tried to pull free. She could not. She tried the other hand. He had already anticipated it. 40 seconds later, the elevator doors opened. Tony dragged her to an empty room. By the time she realized what was happening, Lassie was sitting against the wall of the observation room on the 13th floor with her wrists and ankles tied by Tony's belt. "I will deal with you later," Tony said through the narrowing gap. "Do not damage anything." The lock clicked. He was already moving towards the treatment room to meet the White family sisters. Lassie sat in silence in a helpless state. She began cursing the bastard who sold her the expensive seductive potion. Chapter 119. The room where Monty White lay was quiet and dim. Tony entered the room, and he switched on all the lights. Jean White rose from the chair with a hopeful look. She had been here all day. Tony could see the particular exhaustion in her posture, the weariness of someone who had refused to take rest. She had no place to go now. All her family was wiped out from the Philippines. She looked at Tony's face, then she looked at the herbs he was holding. "You came back," she said. Her voice was quite low. "Did I not promise?" Tony began to arrange the herbs delivered by his family, placing them on the preparation surface in a precise sequence. "Do not worry, I brought everything. Your sister will be saved." Jean's hand went to her mouth. She watched him work without looking at her. His movements were precise and completely without doubt. The morning dew root was separated first, set aside, and the temperature preservation seal was maintained. Then the secondary compounds were arranged in treatment order. He used the grinding tools from the tower's preparation cabinet. He used the mortar and pestle, the ceramic heating element, and the specific small blade used for membrane separation on root compounds. He began grinding, measuring, the careful, exacting process of turning raw herbs into something the body could absorb and use. Each compound required different preparation, different timing, and different temperature. Jean stood back and watched in silence. She had seen healers work before, senior healers, peak masters, and specialists brought in at enormous expense from distant academies. But Tony had a peculiar style. His way of doing things was unique. Tony worked like a man solving a problem he had already solved before. There was no hesitation. There was no consultation. There was no second guessing. People call him useless. When did he become so skilled? Jean thought with a mesmerized look. She did not ask any questions or voice any doubts. She just watched his hands move with complete trust. Tony began applying the first compound on Monty White's body. Then he felt the heat. The touch of the woman's body made him breathe loudly. A heat started low in his chest, spreading under the skin like a small itching. His hands continued moving, completing the current step on reflex, while the rest of his attention turned inward. He felt shaking, sweating, the need for touch, and a craving for lust. His brow tightened slightly. "The potion," Tony muttered while controlling his urges. The fog from the elevator had been more powerful than he had initially assessed. He thought the seductive potion was completely neutralized. But there had been a secondary layer underneath it. "Some bastard really used his brain," Tony muttered as the craving and itching for lust increased. "Seems like the potion is working against my will," he thought grimly. He worked faster. He finished the paste for the first application in one go. He finished the root membrane separation while his hands were still fully reliable. He sequenced the remaining compounds so that if his control slipped, Jean could follow the order without him. Sweat appeared on his forehead. The heat climbed. Jean also observed the subtle changes for the first time. His thoughts were beginning to shake, becoming fragmentary and intrusive with the specific craving for a woman. He suddenly turned toward Jean, but he controlled the instincts in the next second. "Tony." Jean's voice came from somewhere to his left. "Uncertain. Are you?" "Your face." She stared at him in confusion. Tony's cheeks turned red and sweat began covering his body from head to toe. "I am fine." His voice came out strongly. "Do not touch the compounds on the left side of the surface. They are temperature sensitive. You are sweating." "What?" "I am fine," Tony said in a shaky tone while picking up the herb extract. But the bowl almost slipped from his hands. He placed it back on the table at the last second. He was not fine. The heat was becoming problematic, moving into his legs, his hands, and the base of his skull. His vision was clear, but the thinking behind it was developing gaps, little absences where concentration should have been. He finished the second compound. He reached for the third. His hand missed the container by 2 inches. He corrected. He picked it up. He continued. Almost done. Just finish." The heat spiked. Tony's knees made contact with the floor before he had consciously registered falling. The ceramic jar stayed upright. He had managed that much, some reflex protecting the work even as the rest of his body stopped cooperating. The floor was cold against his palms. He was aware of Jean making a sound. There was fear in it, movement, and her footsteps crossing the room quickly. His mind, at the edges, was chaos. Jean reached him and tried to hold him steady. But suddenly, Tony held her hand. She looked at him in surprise. She felt the manly touch. For a second, she lost her grip and Tony completely fell to the ground. His body touched the floor with a loud thud. He controlled the urge to pin her down and enjoy his lustful cravings. Jean's hands appeared in his vision, hovering, not knowing where to help. "Tony, what is happening? Should I call someone?" "Tony." He looked up at her from the floor. His face was drenched in sweat. His eyes were too dull and tired. The heat coming off him was visible now, a faint distortion in the air, the kind that appears above surfaces that have absorbed too much. "The compounds on the right," he said. His voice was controlled with visible effort. "Blue sealed container. Mix it in urgent." His voice died down midway, and he completely lost consciousness. "I do not. Tony, I do not know how to." But Tony had no response. She placed a hand on his forehead and was shocked. "Too hot." Ah, she cried out in the next second as Tony tightly held her hand. Help me, he muttered in a shaky tone while reaching for her face. She took a back step. Tony's heart rate doubled, and his body began heating up at a rapid pace. Tony, who had little rationality left, tried to control the rushing blood. But soon, he found that the changes were uncontrollable. Soon his little brother stood up, and his brain began visualizing scenes of naked cuties, alluring bodies, and furious funking scenes. Meanwhile, the feeling became uncontrollable for Jean White. She was in a complete dilemma. Only Tony could save her sister, and all the resources were processed already. If he failed now, gathering rare herbs might not be possible again. She gritted her teeth and controlled the urge to pounce on the burning Tony. Did he get poisoned? Or did someone use a seductive potion? Jean could not decide what to do. Even if she wanted to bring any help, it was already late night, and anything could happen in her absence. Suddenly the body of her sister began shaking violently and stopped abruptly. Mani. She approached closely. Her heart raced after seeing falling blood pressure. Jean. Suddenly she felt her ankle tightly grabbed. When she looked down, she saw Tony looking at her with a playful and lust-filled stare. Seems like there is one thing I could do, Jean muttered as determination filled her eyes. To be continued. Hope you liked today's video. Join the community by subscribing and dropping a like. I'll be back with another update as soon as possible. See you then.